Good morning, everybody. It's Noah, one of the educators with Shortcuts. And today on our Tuesday classroom session, we're going to be looking at the Shortcuts reports. So this is going to be a basics classroom. So let's go ahead and jump into the PowerPoint. So as with our other presentations we are recording, it's going to be about 30 minutes, give or take. We will allow some time at the end for questions. Now, if you have to drop out early, that's absolutely fine. We will send a copy of this recording out later to everybody. Also, on the GoToWebinar tools, you should have a chat or a questions bar. So if you have to ask a question, go ahead and use that toolbar, and then I'll be able to see who's either raising their hands or asking the questions. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So the Tuesday classroom sessions are really designed for people that are either new to Shortcuts or they really haven't done too much configuration or used most of the features in it. And we're breaking down every week into just specific things. Today's is going to be going through the basics of the reports. So what are some of the key reports that you should absolutely know about, that you should know how to configure, that you should know how to use? So this is very useful for owners and of course for some managers. You should know how to access these and how to use them. So these are the big ones. The trading summary, historically the most popular report for all businesses. And you want to look at future appointments. What is their value? What is their worth? What are top selling products and services? What about employee performance and client retention? So how do we get to those? Let's jump in. So the reporting screen. If you have permission to access this window, it's going to be under Tools and Reports. Now, some of you, if you go to the Tools button and you're missing some icons such as Reports, that may be a permissions issue. So if you're a front desk person and the owner has asked you to take on some manager responsibilities and you don't have access to it, then make sure that you get your permissions elevated so that you can access reports. The individual reports are also protected by security. So you can actually have access to some of the reports, all of the reports. It depends on which one the owner allows you to see. Once you're in the reports, on the left side of the screen, Shortcuts is going to have a list of main reporting categories, things like appointments, business, clients, employees, and within each category, you're going to have the individual reports. Now, there's over 100 different reports in Shortcuts, and we don't assume that you've memorized all of them. Whenever you select an individual report, you actually get a report description that appears on the right side of the screen. So we'll always tell you what's in that report before you click and view it and look at the details. So one of the big ones, we want to make sure that you're tracking your services, especially if you're performing multi-block services. So before you run any service reports, make sure your service categories and your service reports are set up correctly. So if you were to go to Setup, Services, at the bottom of the screen, there's a button that says Reports Category. In Shortcuts, there's 10 different categories you could create. So this depends on your business. If you're, let's say, a barber shop and you have perhaps one or two different main categories, such as you're either doing haircuts or you're doing mustache and beard services. So you would create a report category for haircuts or for beard services. And that's it. The others would remain blank. That way, when you create a service category, again for haircuts or beard services, you'll be able to track those independently. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you're doing a man's haircut, a kid's haircut, or a woman's haircut. They all report to the haircut category. And if, of course, you're doing a beard trim or you're doing a complete shave, then all of those report into the beard category. So how do you go in there? How do you set that up? We'll actually look at that in just a moment. Now, if you're a spa and you have dozens of different services or different blocks of services when you're offering a package service, such as a spa treatment, which may be a hair service plus a massage plus a treatment in a treatment room. So all of those can be tracked under one service. And each block will keep track of the specific things. So this first block will be the hair service, the second block will be the massage service, and the third block will be some sort of skin treatment. And your reporting categories allow you to track each of those independently so that when you run a report, you'll know exactly how many massages, how many haircuts, how many treatments your business did. And again, I'm going to show you in just a moment. So when you're looking at the reports, remember, you can assign report permissions to certain employees, certain staff members. Now, if you're at the owner level, you can, of course, see everything. You can see and do all of the reports, so that's not a problem. But if you decide to give staff permission to run certain reports, let's say the tips report, for example, make sure you give them permission to look at reports. That's one security permission, and that's the checkbox that says Reports Screen. The second is to choose the category and the specific reports. So this is done under Setup, Configuration, and then under the General category, you're going to go to Security. So let's actually look at the things I've been discussing. So we'll jump out of the presentation for a second. And on the right side, before I run any reports under Tools, I want to make sure my service categories are correct, my reports are correct. So I'm going to go to Setup, Services. So this is my test salon. So I've got a few hair services, I've even got some nail services and some massage services. So this is sort of my test spa environment. So I want to make sure that Shortcuts is tracking everything correctly. So I know my times, I know my prices are all there. But when I want to run a report, let's say for massage or nail service or haircut, at the bottom of the screen, I want to make sure I have the appropriate report category. Now, my version of Shortcuts may look a little different than yours. I'm running version 8.1. You may be on version 7 or version 8.0, so your screen may look a little different. However, all of the buttons that I'm pointing out apply in both versions of Shortcuts. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll go to Reports category. And as you can see, I've created a reporting category for each of my main services. So I do have a haircut, styling, color, nail services, massage. And if I add an additional service, let's say I decide to add treatments or some sort of chemical service, I can click on the report number and relabel it. So if I were to add treatments, just like that, I've created a new category for my reports. But I'm happy with my current list. Now, to make sure that the services are all telling the reports which one they go to, I'll choose a haircut, for example, and I'll choose the buzz cut. And at the bottom of the screen, I'll go to my details. So I have my default time and price for this service. In the middle of the screen, there's a row that says Block 1 counts towards haircuts. So this way, this is how I know when I run my reports, it'll count as a haircut, not as a styling, not as a color, not as anything else. So make sure all of your services are counting towards a specific category. So do that first, and then you can run your reports. So we'll go to Tools, we'll go to Reports, and on the left side of the screen, so perhaps I want to look at my services. What are the best-selling services, or what are my service totals? Things like that. So on the left side, I'll expand my services reporting list. And maybe I'll go to my top-selling services. Now remember, every time I click a specific service report, on the right side, Shortcuts tells me what to expect in that report. So this one is pretty much what it says. So I'll press View. I'm going to tell Shortcuts I want to look at this report. So when I press View, Shortcuts is going to say, okay, do I want to look at my top selling services just for today, or do I want to set it for a certain date range? On the left side of the screen, under Options, depending on which report you go to, you have different options. Some reports will only allow you to set a date range. Other reports will allow you to set filters, such as I only want to see the information for one employee, or I only want to see the information for one service category, like haircuts. Some reports have miscellaneous options, such as do I want to see a definition? So Shortcuts will actually show you what was the formula that Shortcuts used to calculate your numbers. Do I want to see the individual transaction breakdown? Do I want to see this information with tax included, yes or no? So I'm going to set my date range. And for my test environment, perhaps I want to look at everything from January. So the 1st through the 31st of January. And then I will press View. So because I chose to see the details, the individual transactions, Shortcuts gave me a list. On all my specific days, how many of the services did I do, and what were my totals? So if I scroll down, so these are my totals. So I have total value of sales, average charge per the service. So this will keep in mind if you are offering any sort of promotions or discounts. It will change the averages. At the bottom of the screen, I can press Next, and I can go to the next report and the next report. And then Shortcuts will give me the list of definitions. So those are all my main categories and my definitions. What does the total value of sales mean? How did I calculate the average charge for a service? So remember, those were miscellaneous settings that I enabled. Otherwise, if I were to run this report, again for January, but I did not necessarily want to see the transactions or the definitions, I'll just set January 1st through the 31st. And View. Instead, Shortcuts will just give me an abbreviated one-page breakdown with my total sales and my averages. And again, each category is represented. So my top are men's haircuts followed by women's haircuts, then some color, and then the package service. So let's go back to the presentation. So that's how you make sure that your service categories are reporting correctly into the individual reports. So remember, when you're running a report, look at your options. For business owners, easily the most important report for your staff members is the commission and wages report. So that one is historically run every week or every 2 weeks, depending on your pay period. And what Shortcuts does is it gives you a one-page breakdown for every staff member. If they're hourly, it will show you how many hours they worked, what their hourly rate is, and what they should be getting paid. If they're commission, Shortcuts will show you whether it was a service commission or a retail commission, what their total should be. And in the event of some locations where you offer them hourly and commission, Shortcuts will also give you a total for that. So for businesses, usually the most important report for your staff is under Employees, Commission/Wages report. And the commission wages report, again, it will show you a one-page breakdown for every staff member. But remember, some of the options you have include selecting just certain employees. So if you have a staff member, unfortunately it's their last week with you and you just want to run the report for them, you can absolutely filter that out. So make sure you check your options for every report. So let's actually run it for my staff. So I'll exit out of Shortcuts again. So under Reports, on the left side, for most businesses, there's a handful of reports you want to know about. For the employees, commission and wages report. So I will run it. Again, usually I set it for 2 weeks, but since this is my test environment, I may not have done too many transactions in the past 2 weeks. So I'll just do it for January, the entire month of January, and I will view it. So Shortcuts will calculate all of my information, and in this case, this would be my staff member. So Andy, it shows me what he did every week. So the first week, second week, third week, what were his total hours? What was his total services? Is he getting a commission? Is he getting an hourly rate? On the right side, Shortcuts would actually give me a total if I had assigned an hourly rate or a commission for him. So Andy, unfortunately, I never assigned him any sort of commission. I did assign a commission or an hourly for Joe, so Shortcuts is giving me a total for him. For Sam, same thing, etc., etc. Now, if your staff should be getting a commission or an hourly, then in that case, you are going to go to Setup and the Employees button. So Andy does not have an hourly rate, so I need to correct that. So I'll say Andy actually gets $10 an hour. If I were to give him a service commission, then on my pull-down list, I would choose which type of commission he should get. So I believe commission 1 is 50%, and I believe commission 2 is 55% or 60%. I don't remember, but I'll say commission 1. So I'm going to save my changes, and I will rerun that same report, commission wages, for the month of January. So now, when I view the report, Shortcuts will actually show me, okay, for Andy, if he's getting hourly, this is what his hourly should be. This is what his commission should be. So if I notice, as I'm going through this, I realize, that's kind of curious. I actually see that Andy has 2 weeks where he had over 140 hours that he worked. So clearly, that's not correct. So before I pay him for 167 hours in 1 week, I want to make sure that Shortcuts is calculating this correctly. So this links to my attendance. If it is the responsibility of my employees to clock in and out, or if I have a front desk person that's supposed to clock in and out, and I discover a mistake, I will see it on the commission wages report. I will also see it in the employee hours report. So if your business is very specific on clocking in and clocking out, before you even run your commission wages report, go ahead and run your employee hours report. So I will view it for that same period, and I will see the specific days where Andy clocked in but perhaps forgot to clock off. And this goes for all of my staff members. So sure enough, on the 13th of January, it looks like Andy clocked in and forgot to clock back off. So he was on the clock for over 100 hours. The same thing goes for Joe. The same thing goes for Sam. They just clocked in and forgot to clock off. So I need to fix this. So to fix it, I'm going to go to Tools and Attendance. Now, Shortcuts only shows me 2 employees, Sam and Stevie. So that's because I'm only looking at the past week. So at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to set my date range again for the month of January. So now I see all my employees, when they clocked in, when they clocked off. If you see where the mistakes are, let's start with Andy. I know for a fact that Andy did not work 121 hours consecutively starting January 20th. There's a few ways to fix this. I can change the specific clock on or clock off time. But the fastest way is to go to the column that says hours and just type a number there. On that day, Andy worked 8 hours. And then I can go to the next one. Okay, what about the 19th? Again, he only worked 8 hours. Now, if there was a day that Andy forgot to clock in, I do have the ability to add a shift. So the first thing I'll do is correct the times that he should have been in and should have been out. So I'm looking on my list. He's clocked in on the 12th, the 13th, the 19th, the 20th, the 26th. So I realize he's actually missing entries from the 20th through the 26th. So to add a shift, I would click on Andy's name at the top of the screen and press New. So I'm going to give him a shift on the 21st. Shortcuts will say, do I want to add a shift for him? Yes, I do. Andy forgot to clock on January 21st. From 9 to 5, done. So Shortcuts has given him those extra 8 hours. And I would repeat the process. I would correct the times for my staff members. So Sam, again, only worked 8 hours that day. So I'll go ahead and give a shift for Sam on the 14th of January. And again, 8 hours. So as long as my staff is clocking in correctly, I shouldn't have to do this. But this is how you correct the mistakes in case they were super busy and they were just going directly to their chair and forgetting to clock in or out. So now that I've done that, now that I've corrected it, if I run my commission and wages report again, and I run it for January, now Shortcuts will actually show that the staff members did not actually work for 300 hours combined. There, that looks more reasonable. So those are Andy's hours worked, 36 one week, 15 another week, 30 another week. Plus it gives me my totals. So those are the commission and wages report and the employee hours report. Two reports that will help you stay on top of your employee hours and what they should be getting paid. So let's go back to the presentation. So of those reports, about 5 of the biggest reports are under your employee category. You've got employee hours, commission wages report, those two I just showed you, the performance summary. So the performance summary will actually show you how your staff stacks up, what their total services were, what their averages were. So you can see on one screen, how do they rank against each other? The tips report. If your business likes to pay out tips at the end of the week or at the end of every 2 weeks, you'll want to know how to access that report and how to print it up. So that's under employee category tips. If you want to look at the reasons, client visit schedule by employee. So what sorts of clients are actually getting rebooks, things like that. So that's your client visit schedule by employee. It will also allow you to print what their visits are for the day. For the business, historically the most popular is the trading summary. Most businesses run it at the end of each day just to get a snapshot of everything that happened. Now, before we start to break down the individual screens, let's talk about some of the ones that I highlighted at the start of the presentation. So I'll go back a few screens. So we're going to look at the trading summary, but also future appointments, top selling products and services, employee performance, client retention. The handful that I just showed you are a good starting place for most businesses. You should absolutely know how to use those. So let's go into the trading summary. So again, historically the most popular report for all businesses, not just Shortcuts customers, but any customer that runs a business. You should know what your totals were and what your averages are on a day-to-day basis, so that if you run your report for a certain period and you notice there's some discrepancy, based on your history, you'll know how to read your trading summary. So on the left side, you're going to get your details on your averages, how many customers came in, the types of customers came in, and at the bottom of the screen, you'll get a breakdown for each staff member. What were their totals? What were their averages? Now, future appointments. It's nice to know how your staff trended for a specific day, but how many of you are getting rebookings? If you're an appointment-based salon or a barbershop or a spa, and you live or die by appointments, you want to make sure that your staff reminds customers that they should book their next appointment while they're still in the chair, or have a receptionist do that. So you want to make sure you run your value of future appointments. This is going to remind you that you probably have to set some sort of automated no-show email or text for your salon, so that if somebody does forget their future appointment, then as soon as you mark them as a no-show, Shortcuts does have the ability to message this customer to try to cut down on those. Plus, if you're using confirmations through Shortcuts, Shortcuts will remind the customer a day or two before their appointment, hey, don't forget, you're supposed to come in this Thursday. Will we see you? Yes or no? Or call to reschedule. So future appointments have a value. Remind your staff of that. Make sure your staff is getting those customers to commit to a future visit. So run that report just to see how the business is trending. What is your percentage of customers that actually get booked for future appointments? Who are these employees that should be getting some sort of bonus or some sort of compensation for getting customers back in the chair? Plus, you can spot where your slow periods are. And when you're if you have high demand services, what are those? When should you schedule more staff members? So this is a very useful report. So this is future appointments, value of future appointments. Top selling products. So if your shop, if your salon, if your spa relies on a lot of retail, you should absolutely know what are the hot items, what's not selling, so that you can cut down on your orders or discontinue a line if you see no value in it. So look at your top selling products category, your top selling products report. Again, Shortcuts will give you totals, averages, and of course, profit. So this connects to the classroom session we did the previous week, which was setting up your companies and your lines and your products when you're dealing with inventory and Shortcuts. So if you missed that classroom session, if you go to our YouTube channel, Shortcuts USA, we actually have a session which shows you how to properly set up your inventory. So this will directly correspond every time you sell, either retail or professional, the corresponding reports. And just like we have top selling products, we have top selling services. Again, you can run it for any period. We usually advise run it for the past month. Look at your popular services, your least popular services. What are your average charges? And is perhaps the staff discounting a little too much on some of your top selling services or your most expensive services? So that gives you an idea of what to look at for your business, what to look at for your trends. If you are fixated on details and you want to see more information than what's available in the standard employee performance report, which will just give you totals and averages, we do have an employee performance summary extended report. So this will actually show you what were their averages on retail, services, things like that, but also what is their rebooking percentage? How many customers that visit them also book a future appointment? If you're doing any sort of cost tracking in Shortcuts, what is the cost for these services? What are their averages on tickets? What's their conversion for retail to service? So again, if you want to see a more detailed breakdown of how your staff is doing, go to the Employee Performance Summary Extended Report. And this is under the employee category. And the big one, Client Retention Report. So a lot of businesses, of course, we have customers that come and go. And depending on how your staff treats the customers, depending on what they think of the salon, the care that they receive, you may actually have a customer that perhaps doesn't work well with one employee, but does work well with another employee. So your business didn't necessarily lose that customer, just the staff wasn't able to retain that. So you can actually have that information up here in this report. How many customers stayed with the same employee? How many customers moved to a different employee? And of course, how many didn't return? So you'll actually see the value in trying to get that retention. Which staff members are actually getting customers to stay with them, or which customers are just abandoning a certain employee. Is this something due to lack of training? Is it a personality issue? So this can give you a lot of insight for your staff as well as for your customers. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these reports. So we'll jump out of the presentation. Again, we're under Tools, Reports, and on the left side. So we have under Employees, Future Appointments. So what is all future appointments for the employee? So that's just to give a list of how many customers they will be seeing. But we want to see not just the names of the customers, but what sorts of values do they have? So again, on the left side of the screen, we have all these different categories you could go to. At the top, appointments. Under appointments, value of future appointments. So let's say I want to run it for the month of March. If hopefully my state allows me to open, or my province allows me to open, from the 1st through the 31st, all the appointments that I have made. So I'll go ahead and view it. And of course, this is my test database. So I'm going to have a bunch of appointments. So I can see that I have a tremendous value, especially with Sam. Sam is getting a lot of customers, and a lot of the majority of the business will go to Sam. If I were to double click on an individual column, Stevie, for example, Shortcuts will give me a breakdown on his information. At the top of the screen, on the top left, you can actually see I now have two separate tabs for Sam, Stevie, or I could return to the main screen preview. So that's the value of my future appointments. If I just want to print up my day's appointments for the staff, I could do that. So you can see there's a lot of information, a lot of different reports that are available, but I'm just pointing out a few of them. So that's value of future appointments. So then for clients, do I want to look at customers that have not returned from a certain date range? Or who are my top spending clients? I do have reports under that category. Under business, all sorts of reports, visit frequency analysis. So for a certain period, what was my client visits for an employee? So if I want to see when exactly is Sam getting his customers, are they mostly weekend customers, weekday customers? Should I try to give Sam more hours or change his schedule depending on his availability? Under the employee category, again, I have a performance summary, and I'll show you the difference between the two screens. The standard performance summary, I'll run it for the past month. So Shortcuts will give me a simple one-page breakdown. These were my staff members, these were their total services, these were their total dollars, and their averages. Okay, but I need more insight. So I will go to the Performance Summary Extended report. I'll run it for the same date range, and each employee is going to have their own column with a more detailed breakdown of what they did during that period. So let me zoom in a little so that you can see it. So now I have more specific information. So the hours that Andy worked, what was his productivity, his retail, his services, just his retail, his totals. So I have a lot more insight into how my staff is actually doing. Rebooking breakdown. So again, under employees, who's getting those rebookings? I'll view it again, either for the past or in this case, the future. I'll say for the month of March. Who got those rebookings? And 0. Probably because I haven't done any test transactions in the past few months. Let's see if I can see it for the past. Which is always the danger when I'm using a test environment. There we go. So unfortunately, I had a number of visits in January, but the staff forgot to rebook the customers. So I don't have any accurate numbers. But those are just some of those reports. Let's go back to the presentation. So I've given you a handful of reports to look at. The basics on how to set up the services to track them, or how to set up the employees to track their commission or wages. So those are the ones you should look at as a business owner, as a manager. But when you get a chance, take a look at some of these other reports. Discount reasons. So is the staff being a little heavy-handed with regards to discounts, or is it a certain employee? We actually have a report that will show you what were the discounts and who tends to give them out. The value of your future appointments, referrals, service breakdown, product sales summary. So the more you know about what's happening in your business, the easier it is to make adjustments and, of course, become a more successful business. So those are the basics in reports and shortcuts. You should now know what to focus on, at least if you are new to shortcuts or you've been assigned some additional responsibility and you need to know how to get into the reports. You should know how to do that. So this is where we open up the floor for questions. So if you're listening in on GoToWebinar, on the right side you should have a question or a chat toolbar. Go ahead and use that and write in your question, and I'll take a look on my side. And I'll see if anybody has a question. I'll give you all a second if somebody's writing a bunch of notes right now. Now, if you're listening to this recording after the fact, you can always reach out to us. So if you need to get an upgrade for shortcuts from version 7 to version 8, or if you haven't used or don't have text confirmations for your customers and you'd like to sign that up to prevent a lot of no-shows, let us know. You can reach out to us at customercare@shortcuts.net. Or if you have a question on something we covered on the presentation, education@shortcuts.net. So I think we're good. I don't think we have any questions. So again, if you're interested in shortcuts or want to look at more features, let us know. Here's our customer care details. You can also reach out to us on social media. Oh, I think Teresa has a question before I wrap this up. Let me see. In future appointments, explain no-show emails. I don't think I get the question, Teresa. If I understand your question correctly, the future appointments report will not necessarily count no-show emails, how many you sent out, things like that. So none of these reports necessarily report on any campaigns you have set up, whether it's a no-show email, an appointment acknowledgement email, or a confirmation. It's a good question. Yeah, but if your business is not already using it, you may want to set up your no-show emails in the cloud. You also, of course, have the ability to set up appointment acknowledgement. So whether a customer books online or books in person at your business, Shortcuts does have the ability to send them an email just to show them this is the day and the time of your next visit. It's not the same as a confirmation email. It's just an acknowledgement to let them know, okay, we got your appointment and this is it. Okay, I think those were our only questions for today. So thank you all for attending. Next week, we will talk about another subject, another basics class. So again, if you're new to Shortcuts, if you haven't used it in a while, every Tuesday morning, we do these reviews. So make sure that any staff members that are new to Shortcuts, you might want to have them sit in as well. Okay, everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you all again soon.